So another model we can use for division is as a ratio. So when we divide two numbers, we can think of it as a ratio of two numbers. So for example, if I do 6 divided by 5, really what we're doing is we're comparing 5 parts to 6 parts, right? We can do 6 divided by 5 and compare these parts, 6 parts to 5 parts whole. Okay, so we can look at divide as a ratio of two parts. So like I said, we can do 6 to 5, and then that translates into a fraction, 6 divided by 5. So divide and ratio comparisons are very much the same thing. So we can think of divide as a ratio when we do fractions. So if I'm dividing two fractions, 1/4 fraction divided by a 1/2 fraction, what I can be saying is I'm comparing a 1/4 fraction to a 1/2 fraction in a ratio. So there's my 1/4 fraction, here's my 1/2 fraction, and I want to compare these as a ratio. Well, if I look at this ratio of parts, I can say there's 1 part to 2 parts here. Okay? So 1/4 divided by 1/2 then could be thought of as a 1 part to 2 part ratio, okay, or 1/2. So 1/4 divided by 1/2 can be written as a fraction like this. A 1/4 fraction compared to a 1/2 fraction we can say is a 1 to 2 ratio, or the answer is 1/2. Okay, so divide as a ratio is a very good method to kind of visualize what does this division actually mean. Okay, so we can do this with fraction pieces, and we can do this visually. So if I have a 1/3 fraction, I can draw a 1/3 fraction like this. Okay, so there's my 1/3 fraction. And then in the denominator, I'm dividing by 1/6. So I can draw my 1/6 fraction like this. Okay, so I have a 1/6 fraction. How do these two fractions compare to each other? Well, how does this area compare to this area? Well, it's a little bit easier if I can see this in terms of equivalent fractions, so the same size pieces. And if you didn't see it before, we can see now very clearly this is 2 pieces compared to 1 piece here, or 2 to 1. So 1/3 divided by 1/6 is equal to 2 over 1, or 2. So if you try that on your calculator, 1/3 divided by 1/6, we would get the answer of 2. And again, another way we can think of division is, how many 1/6 fit into 1/3? Well, yeah, there's 2 whole 1/6 that fit into a 1/3 fraction. So the answer should be 2. So this idea of divide as a ratio helps us think of fraction division. We can just compare fractions as a ratio. So again, here we have 1/6 divided by 2/3. Well, if I have a 1/6 fraction here and a 2/3 fraction here, okay, and the 1/6 is in red, 2/3 is in blue, and we can see that it's a little bit easier to maybe see if I just kind of make the same shapes here. So I'm just going to chop this up into the same number of pieces. Now I can see very clearly when I overlap these that a 1/6 fraction compared to a 2/3 fraction is in a ratio of 1 to 4. Okay, there's 1 piece here compared to 4 pieces here. So the answer to this division then of 1/6 divided by 2/3 is 1/4, or how many 2/3 can fit inside a 1/6 fraction? Well, only 1/4 of the blue can fit inside the red, so the answer should be 1/4. So we can confirm this in a few different ways, in terms of a ratio, or in terms of how many denominators fit into the numerator. So we have these methods, these models that we can use to confirm exactly what's going on. Okay.